witnesses, Ms. Brady, Mr. King, Ms. Nelson, Ms. Higgs, and Ms. Spengler. And the people are represented by Mr. Brockler, Mr. Orman, Ms. Pearson, Mr. Edson, and Ms. Tish McGuire. We are outside the presence of the jury. I looked at the defense's tendered instruction number 1 over the weekend, and perhaps we can chat about it at the end of the day or during the lunch break. And then I have a couple of other things to bring out to counsel's attention. I put together a proposed instruction related to Rule 703 based on the discussion that Mr. King, Mr. Brockler, and I had last week at the bench. And it reads as follows, and this is just proposed, and I don't have to give it, but just as a proposal in case counsel want me to give it if the issue comes up again. I think the issue when it came up last week dealt with a question that asked about what was not said as opposed to what was said by someone outside the courtroom. But I anticipate that this issue may come up again. So I would propose something along the lines of, members of the jury, this witness's testimony regarding the statement or statements by blank has not been admitted for the truth or the content of the statement or statements. Rather, it has been admitted only to explain the basis for this witness's expert opinions. You may not consider such testimony for any other purpose. And I'm open to suggestions or comments to change any part of it or to add to it or subtract from it. The other proposed instruction that I put together this weekend has to do with the issue of credibility. And this one came up in order D-241, and then pursuant to motion D-276, and without objection, in order D-276, I agreed to give the instruction that was proposed, which reads as follows. Members of the jury, the testimony that is being presented relates only to the issues raised by the defendant's plea of not guilty by reason of insanity. You are reminded that you are the sole judges of all issues of credibility in this case. So this one has to do with a situation in which someone asks an expert, a mental health expert, about the reliability of one of the statements provided by the defendant, and trying to stay away from the troublesome area of an expert testifying about the general credibility of another person, which of course is prohibited. I didn't like this instruction that was submitted and that I accepted without objection, because I don't think it really explains with enough detail what the jury needs to be aware of or needs to be concerned with. Here's one that I wrote, and it's just a proposal for you to consider, and you don't have to tell me right now whether you like it better or don't like it better, and you can certainly make suggestions to it or make proposed changes to it. It reads as follows. Members of the jury, as you have heard, this witness's expert opinions are based in part on information he obtained from the defendant. In order to permit this witness to explain his opinions and the basis for his opinions, the court has allowed the parties to question him about his perception of the reliability of some of the information. You are not bound by this witness's perception of the reliability of any information acquired from the defendant. You are the sole judges of all issues of credibility in this case, including the reliability of any information provided by the defendant to an expert witness. You must not consider this witness's perception of the reliability of information provided by the defendant as an opinion or comment on the defendant's general credibility. Colorado law strictly prohibits witnesses, including expert witnesses, from opining or commenting on another person's general credibility. All credibility assessments and determinations in this trial must be made only by the jury. So that's a proposal for you to consider or to look at. If you want, I can have copies made for you and you can think about it, and then you can tell me during one of the breaks whether you would like to to have me give it, or whether you would like to have me change it, or whether you both prefer that we stick with the one that you submitted in order, or motion D-276 that I adopted in order D-276. Is there anything at this time on behalf of the people? Mr. Brockler?
No, sir, thank you.
Is there anything on behalf of the defense?
Judge, we're wondering if we could possibly get a copy of that draft instruction in writing so that we could take a closer look at it.
Yes,
Thank you.
you bet.
We don't have anything else.
All right, thank you. Could you make them a copy, please, both sides? Thank you. And by the way, while on the topic of that last instruction, I think that the safest course of action is to stay away from having an expert talk about the credibility of another person, whether it's another witness or the defendant. And I understand that both sides may wish to explore with different experts the reliability of certain information provided by the defendant. And I think that's fair game. That's almost a necessity in this case. So for example, on cross-examination, someone could ask, well, doctor, you reached opinion A, even though the defendant told you C. Why is that? Or can you explain that? And the doctor, I think, should be allowed to explain, well, I felt that the information provided by the defendant, information C in this example, was inconsistent with other parts of the record, or was inconsistent with what I viewed or my expertise, or whatever it may be. I think if you phrase it, and people phrase it in terms of statements being inconsistent with other parts of the record, or inconsistent with an expert's understanding or expertise, whatever it may be, I think that's the safer route to go. Obviously, pursuant to my order, everyone should stay away from using the word lie. I felt that he was lying about that. I felt that he was being untruthful about that, or I didn't believe him when he said that. Instead, the focus should be on the reliability of the information based on whether it was consistent or inconsistent with other information in the record, or scientific principles, or expertise, or perhaps an expert's perception of logic and common sense. All right, with that, let's go ahead and bring in the jury, please. And the record should reflect that we just made a copy for each side of the last proposed instruction that I read. The record should reflect that the jury is back in the courtroom. Everyone may be seated. Good morning, members of the jury. How's everyone doing? Good. All right, did you have a good weekend? Yes. All right. Some of you an emphatic yes, other soft yes. But nevertheless, it sounds like uniformly yes. I'm glad you did. I'm glad you're back and you're here on time again, as usual. I appreciate that. At the end of last week, on Friday, the prosecution was still in the middle of its direct examination of Dr. Reed, and the prosecution was playing one of the segments of P-TR-1005. So at this time, Mr. Brockler, do you want to continue playing that segment?
I do, Your Honor.
I think there are about 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes left, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, why don't we do that then? I'll dim the lights, consistent with my practice, and then we can proceed. Is that on you or is that on us? It's on us. Ms. Curlings, Ms. Zagel? Maybe Ms. McKager can help.
That was just to show that I could buy all that stuff and nobody would notice.
Anything else about that picture that a person looking at it might infer or feel?
That it's dangerous. That it's a lot. It's almost like overkill.
Okay. By the time you got to the theater and got out and put it on, you were pretty much wearing everything in the picture.
Pretty much so, yeah.
Anything important about the color of the sheets, of the sheet?
I have two pairs of sheets, kind of silky red and a silky black. And if it would have been black, you wouldn't have been able to see as well.
Okay. Why'd you pick silky black and silky red sheets, by the way? I'm curious.
I thought they looked good.
Good.
Yeah.
Tell me about, these were in your apartment. That reminds me of kind of ask. Tell me about your apartment.
Was 800 square feet, I think. Complete kitchen. I don't know, it was a good apartment. It was close. It was right next to the Anschutz Medical Campus.
And that's where your classes and labs were?
Yeah.
On the Anschutz Medical Campus. Okay. So you didn't have to drive?
Right, I could just walk or ride my bike.
You did ride a bike sometimes. Did you ride the bike a lot? Or?
I would ride it every day to work and back.
Okay. Bring it up to the apartment at night?
Yeah.
Okay. Pretty good bike, or?
Oh, I've had it for years and years.
Okay. As a place to live, in your apartment's a personal place. Where people live is a personal place. What was it? How was it personal to you? Or how did you make it personal to you?
I guess by changing the lighting.
How'd you change the lighting?
I put like red bulbs in the lights.
In all of them or some of them?
Some of them.
Okay. Roughly when did you do that?
Towards the end of graduate school.
We're talking
Like
May?
June, I think.
In June, okay. Any particular reason that you personalized it with red light bulbs?
Other than I just thought it looked nice.
Okay. At that time, did you know or anticipate or plan that the police would be coming to your apartment?
I figured they would go to the apartment on a noise complaint.
Okay. Did the red light bulbs have anything to do with what people might find when they...
No, that didn't have anything to do with it.
I'm curious which outlets were or which lights
messy too, because I kind of kept all my clothes on a section of the floor.
On a section of the floor.
Yeah, so it had its own spot. Because I would use all the drawers for other things.
For other stuff. So this is the section for shirts or something like that.
Or just laundry.
Okay.
Yeah.
You said you use the drawers for other things, like what?
Storing papers, notebooks and stuff.
Do you have anything on the walls?
Yeah, I had posters.
What were the posters on?
I had a Pulp Fiction poster, Samuel Jackson, and what's his name? I don't remember. Oh, John Travolta.
Which poster was Pulp Fiction? I can picture the content. Would you mind telling me what was the content of the Pulp Fiction poster?
It was in the scene where they busted the drug runner guys, and the guy had shot at them like 20 times and missed every single time. And then they pointed their guns at him.
And what did he do when they pointed their guns at him?
Well, he got shot.
How about the Samuel Jackson poster? What was the content of that?
That is the poster.
Oh, that's the same. I'm sorry, the same scene. What other things did you have on the walls?
I had one of those motivational posters that said like challenge, take your shot. It's a shot of whiskey or something.
Okay.
Probably not a good alcoholics poster.
What else did you have on the wall?
I had a movie poster of Anchorman.
Okay.
I like that movie.
Yeah, the comedy. Yeah.
I had a Zombie Brains poster.
Okay. Did you keep much alcohol in the apartment?
Yeah. So I will supply that.
How much, say, was in the apartment in July?
I think there was like a case of Coors Light and 2 bottles of liquor.
Okay. How much would you drink in general over the months?
I usually drink socially, and so I bring some of the beer with me.
Okay. Different people mean different things when they say social.
Over dinner with friends.
And we talked, I think, about drinking yesterday a little bit. Drink very much when you were by yourself in the apartment?
No, not really.
As you were getting ready for this event, the July 20 event, did you drink very much?
No.
What else is in the apartment?
My computer. Just basic furniture, my TV.
Okay. Garden came there from time to time when you all were dating, when you were in the relationship.
Yeah.
Would you usually go to your apartment or her apartment? Or her place?
Before she broke up, it was usually like half and half. But then after we got back together, it was all my apartment.
What was her place like?
A little messier than mine.
Apartment or house?
She shared an apartment with another gal.
Nearby? No.
Yeah, it was nearby.
But not the same building?
Like, it was like 5-minute drive.
Okay. You were in an apartment building.
Yeah.
Who else lived in the apartment building? Did you
Other
know
students and nurses.
primarily or exclusively? Or?
Primarily. I didn't get to know them, like, at all, basically.
Did you see them coming in and out?
Yeah.
Doing laundry and things like that?
Yeah, I saw them in passing.
At the time, did you know their names? Any of their names?
No.
There wasn't a single person who lived there whose name you knew?
Well, they had their names on the mailboxes, but I didn't memorize them or get to know them or anything.
Were you ever in anyone else's apartment in your building?
Nope.
Was anyone else who lived in the building ever in your apartment?
Nope.
Okay. Any particular reason?
No, not really. It wasn't a very social apartment. Kind of everybody had their own rooms.
You mentioned the posters on the walls, this scantily clad young woman. There's another selfie that was on your phone of you with a woman right behind you. Do you remember that one? That picture?
That's the scantily clad one.
Was that the scantily clad
Yeah.
poster? Okay. I got to tell you, the first time I saw it, I didn't know
It was a poster.
that it was a poster.
Okay.
Tell me about that picture and when you took it, and
I don't remember the condition of it.
so far as you know, roughly when was it in the course of all this?
I think it was June as well.
Okay. I don't have a copy of it here. If I were to show it to you, what would you say about the guy in that picture?
I wouldn't be noticing the guy. I would be noticing the gal.
Okay. When you took the picture, it looks very much like you meant to have it look a certain way, with her resting a head on your shoulder or looking over your shoulder close to you. Looks like it was purposely framed that way. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's fair to say.
Okay. Was the picture manipulated at all, or were you just standing by the poster?
I think I was just standing in front of the poster.
Okay. That doesn't say much about my powers of observation, does it?
No.
So, if the picture was framed that way on purpose, what does that framing convey to somebody, or imply to somebody who's looking at the picture?
That I'm desirable.
Can you say more about that?
No, not really.
Did you ever look at the picture very much yourself?
No, I kind of took it that one time and then forgot about it.
What might you have been thinking when you took it? Speculating, I know.
I don't know.
Were you a pretty desirable guy in January, February, March, April, May, June of 2010? Or 2012, rather?
I would say so, yeah.
Okay. There were two women that wanted to hang out with you, at least.
Yep.
Okay. Did you think or feel that you were a pretty desirable guy at the time?
No, I kind of felt that would make me more desirable, seeing you with someone like that.
You think you wanted to feel more desirable yourself?
Probably, yeah.
I don't want to just feed you answers, because then I just get back what I get from a mirror.
Yep.
But I'm wondering whether you needed some help feeling desirable or good or competent or positive things about yourself.
I don't know if you can surmise all that from the one picture, but I was trying to feel desirable.
What's going on inside your mind that you are trying to feel desirable?
Well, just because I'd broken up with my ex-girlfriend.
But around that time, and we're not sure exactly when the picture was taken, I guess, around that time, you had rebuffed her, and you had rebuffed Hillary.
Right.
Now, the reason you gave, at least with regard to Hillary, was that you didn't want her to end up being the girlfriend of a murderer. wanting to be desirable after that?
Well, not wanting to be alone. Wanting to start another relationship.
Are you a pretty lonely guy?
No, I feel best when I'm alone, I would say.
You feel best when you're alone.
Okay.
But a few minutes ago, you said that there were times when you didn't want to feel alone. Or didn't want to be alone or feel alone, one or the other.
Right.
And by the way, these aren't black and white things. They can blend and they can come and go. At times were you a pretty lonely guy?
No, because I don't usually feel lonely when I'm alone.
Since you've been arrested, have you felt lonely?
Yes, just because of the sheer amount of being alone for 2 years. Kind of a thing.
It's an enormous amount of being alone for 2 years. It's absolutely enormous. Has your sister deserted you?
Nope. She and I are both kind of living separate lives. But she still cares about me.
Please correct me, but I don't think she's contacted you once except for being with your parents when they visited in 2 years. Is that accurate?
I can't remember if she wrote a letter or not. But she certainly doesn't do it like every week or month.
Think she's written you any letters?
I don't remember if she has.
Let me ask it again. Has your sister deserted you? Abandoned you?
Nope.
Where's the evidence that she hasn't abandoned you?
She came with my parents on the visit.
Does that strike you as pretty scant evidence for 24 months?
Well, my parents only were allowed to visit twice, so that being one of the times,
And that's not their fault. They were only allowed those visits. That's my understanding. But they've written you scores of times.
That's just the relationship dynamic between me and my sister.
When you were describing your sister yesterday, she loved her big brother. She was looking up to her big brother. She helped her big brother dig a hole in the sand and fill it up with water. Real typical younger sister, older brother stuff.
Yep, now the situation's not so typical.
There are people who don't even know you who write to you and send you pictures.
Yeah.
And your sister doesn't.
I don't see a problem with that.
Do you see anything unusual? Do you see anything that doesn't? I'm not sure how to phrase it without using triple negatives. It wouldn't take much for her to send you a damn postcard.
Right, but I'm not demanding it of her or anything.
Have you abandoned her?
Well, I haven't written her either, so it goes both ways.
Have your lawyers asked that you not write to people?
That was kind of a stance I took early on, just to be on the safe side.
On the safe side with regard to?
Because all the letters are recovered and can be as admissible as discovery.
Okay. So it's logical and natural that lawyers recommend that people not write, or that they be very careful what they write pre-trial.
Right.
I understand that part.
Yeah. But I don't know if that's stopping me from writing her.
Exactly. Thank you. Exactly my question. Absent that, would you be writing to your sister?
Probably not, because I don't have much to talk about. There's books I'm reading and TV I'm watching, and that's about it. So,
Absent that, would you be writing to your parents?
I would probably write to my mom, just because she writes so often.
So far as you know, have any of the friends that you had, Ben, Tim, Gargi, Hillary, anybody else, have they written to you or tried to write to you?
Not that I know of, no.
What do you speculate, and it would be pure speculation, what do you speculate they think about you now?
They're probably moving on with their own lives, and mine's not interspersed with them.
Right. What do you think they think of you now? Think about you, that's better put. What do you think they think about you?
That I was a good friend.
What else? When somebody says to them, James Holmes, what does that bring up in their mind now?
That they knew me before I was the incident, before the shooting incident.
You started to say something else before I was blank. What were you going to put in that blank?
Mentally ill. Like outright showing mentally ill.
What feeling do you think they might have toward you, or feelings do you think they might have toward you?
They probably want to distance themselves from me so they don't get lumped in as related to a killer.
That's close, but not quite what I asked. What do you think their feelings are toward you?
I think they care about me, so I'm not sure.
Okay. Mom and Dad, feelings toward you?
Warm feelings.
Okay. Sister, feelings toward you?
Just still warm feelings.
Okay. And that's an inference, not based on data, right? That's an inference.
That's my assumption.
Or assumption, okay. Okay. Is there any chance that your friends would be really pissed at you?
No, I don't think so at all. Unless it interfered with their lives. The press interfered with their lives.
Any chance that they might be disgusted by you?
No, I think they'd be supportive.
How about this? Any chance that she might be disgusted or repulsed or angry or have any real negative?
She certainly didn't show it in the visit. She was my typical sister.
Okay. What do you think the public feels? And they don't know you. They know the incident based on the media. That's all they know. What do you think their feeling is? Or feelings?
Dislike, I would say.
Anything else?
Misunderstood.
Okay. How do you mean that? Tell me more about misunderstood.
Well, they don't have the full picture of my life and what's happened.
Are you aware of, in general, the media coverage and stuff like that?
Yeah, we have a TV. Go and can see some coverage on the news.
So you're pretty much up on how the media treated this incident, how the media has treated you? Or no?
No, I'm kind of sheltered from that, maybe.
Okay. Who shelters you?
Just not having computer access or internet access.
She had TV access. The lawyers talk with you frequently. Do they talk about public reaction at all?
No, not really.
Does anybody at the jail, the custody people, mention public reaction at all?
Like guards or?
Yeah.
No, not at all.
But occasionally inmates call things out, as you said yesterday. Yeah.
Yeah, that's primarily negative. Some are supportive, but it's definitely on the fewer side.
Did you see any TV coverage? Of course, the most coverage comes in the first week or two, doesn't it?
Right.
But you did have out time when you had access to TV. Do you recall any TV coverage at that time?
They're memorializing the victims.
Did any of the coverage refer to you?
Oh, well, they'll just refer to me as the theater gunman or whatever.
Is that the guy in these pictures?
Yeah, basically.
Okay. Is the theater gunman similar to the guy that you see in these pictures, or different from the guy you see in these pictures?
Akin to those in the pictures.
Okay. So your access to news on TV is not particularly filtered. I'm sure they choose the channel or choose certain channels.
I usually don't choose to watch the news.
The news. After the event, do you remember choosing to watch the news?
That was a long time ago, but I saw some news on it.
Was it of interest to you? Do you remember or not?
Yeah, I found it interesting. Just see a different perspective.
Do you remember how you felt as you watched the various news stories?
Mainly that they get a bunch of stuff wrong, I think. Or biased.
What sorts of things in general would they get wrong or would they be unduly biased about?
I'm not sure.
Speculating for me. What, I know it was 2 years ago, but it was a real big day in your life, a real big week in your life.
Yep.
So you just said they got stuff wrong and they were biased. I'm asking what's in general that they got wrong or what they might have been biased about.
Well, they didn't take it from my perspective, maybe. On the mentally ill perspective.
If they had, what would they have been reporting? What would they have been saying?
Kind of psychological reasons for why it happened the way it did and everything.
Anything else? Maybe that relates to your word misunderstood. Anything else about misunderstood?
No, not really.
This afternoon, I'd like to do a little bit more about your apartment.
Okay.
Interesting place, especially when you left. I'd like to learn more about that. Anything that you'd like to ask me or
No.
anything that I didn't ask today?
No, that's okay.
We'll continue this afternoon about 2, okay?
All right.
Thanks again. There we go.
I'm going to turn on the lights again. The record should reflect that the prosecution just finished playing the last segment of Exhibit P-TR-1005. And when I say the last segment, I don't mean the last segment of the exhibit, but the one that was just playing. And Dr. Reed has now resumed the witness stand. Doctor, I remind you that you're still under oath.
Yes, sir.
And I will remind the jury that the court has admitted Dr. Reed's testimony for a limited purpose. You may consider the testimony only as to the issues raised by the defendant's plea of not guilty by reason of insanity. You shall not consider this evidence for any other purpose. All right, Mr. Brockler, you may proceed.
Dr. Reed, I wanted to touch upon a couple of the areas that went into this video, and some of it's harkening back to Friday. If there are things that you need to refer to refresh your recollection, let me know, and we can do that, okay?
Sure.
First off, we know that the defendant makes reference throughout this video to depression and feeling depressed. Did you notice that?
Yes.
Now, tell us, what significance is there to that, and did you find in those statements evidence, or even in the record, evidence of clinical depression at about the times he's talking?
He mentions depression and being depressed, and that's simply his statement, remembering it from a couple of years back. The word depression doesn't necessarily mean diagnosed depression, doctor-diagnosed depression, and there are many kinds of doctor-diagnosed depression, some relatively mild and some extremely severe, and lots in between. The review of the record, in my opinion, does not suggest any severe depression, debilitating depression, things like that.
He also
Prior to the shootings, I beg your pardon.
I'm sorry, and I was going to get to that. Did you see anywhere in the record leading up to the defendant being arrested for these murders where he has indicated to anyone, to include Dr. Fentons and Feinstein, that he was depressed or feeling depressed?
Nothing except in his notebook.
Did you see
that
any...
I recall.
I'm sorry, sir.
Okay.
Did you see anything in the notes from Dr. Fenton and Feinstein suggested that they perceived him to be depressed?
No, they did a good evaluation. They asked him lots of questions, as psychiatrists and Ms. Roth also do. They asked about that, and the written record from them, as well as my interviews of them, did not indicate that they thought depression was a major part of the issue when they saw him.
In your experience, is it unusual for someone who finds themselves in jail awaiting charges on a case such as this, with the issues at stake, the potential sentence at stake, that could lead to depression?
Speaking generally, it's very common in my experience.
I want to talk to you about his references in your discussion with him about suicide, but I want to start with an incident that he described that he called parasuicide with a piece of cardboard. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Tell us about that if it has significance to you.
This was when he was, I think, very early teens, sitting in the back of the van, leaving their former home in Salinas and moving back to San Diego. He was frustrated about leaving. He gave some reasons that he didn't want to move, and cut at himself, if I can use that, with a piece of cardboard. He used the term parasuicide, which is a clinical term that indicates that it's related to wanting to die. I have no other indication from the record that he truly wanted to die. That doesn't mean he wasn't uncomfortable at the time. He was a young kid. I don't draw any particular clinical inference from it that's relevant to him as a grown-up.
Do you treat it, in your experience, as someone who had attempted suicide?
No. And it's important that a kid is uncomfortable and needs to do that. But kids do lots of things. They beat on their knee or they hit the wall or something. And I don't mean to downplay it, but I do not put this in the category of attempted suicides or thinking about death, that sort of thing. I couldn't read his mind at the time, of course, but that's the way I see it.
Now, again, you had the opportunity to review a bunch of records that you told us about on the first day that you considered, including some family therapy with a guy named Mel Lipsy, all the way through Mrs. Roth, Dr. Fenton, Dr. Feinstein. Did you find anywhere in the record where the defendant had indicated that he had thought about suicide or tried to hurt himself with those mental health professionals?
Not with those professionals. There is one place in which one of the other experts, Dr. Gurr, speaks of his telling her that he felt like killing himself when he was an adolescent, but there was no expansion of that. There's no indication that there was any attempt, and nothing else in the record that I reviewed indicates any suicidal thoughts, much less serious suicidal thoughts, much less attempts.
Did you get it from anywhere else in the record to include your interviews with other folks about prior to the incident, including his parents?
Yes.
Okay. Again, same question I'd asked you about the depression. In your experience, someone who is in this situation, in jail for a couple years, facing charges of this magnitude with the potential sentence in front of him, is that uncommon that they would then slip into thoughts of suicide?
In my experience, it's not uncommon, and I'm speaking generally. It's just suicides in jails, the rate of attempts is much higher than in the general population, things like that. And the common sense of it comes into play a little bit. I hope that's responsive.
There is something else that we start to see here that I think we're going to see at the rest of these videos, and that is a discussion by the defendant that he had, and I'm going to use air quotes here, transferred his suicidal thoughts into homicidal thoughts. Talk to us about any significance that had or thoughts you had about that.
Mr. Holmes mentions in several places that his homicidal thoughts of killing people, were there because those thoughts were protecting him from being aware of suicidal thoughts. In a sense, and I think using his words even almost, killing people would keep him from wanting to kill himself or keep him from killing himself. In my experience in the interviews, as we've seen and you will see, I think, he does not say to me, even after being asked several times, does not say that I was aware of suicidal thoughts and the homicidal thoughts helped, but rather he says, I had homicidal thoughts, and he assumes that they were there because they were covering up suicidal thoughts that he wasn't really aware of. I know that sounds a little circular, but that's the way he spoke of it. Once again, I'll refer just for completeness to Dr. Gurr's report and Dr. Gurr's examination, in which she heard it a little bit differently, but that's the way I heard it in the time that I spent with him.
There's also a reference by the defendant to catatonia, or feeling catatonic. Talk to us about that.
Sure. Catatonia is a mental health term that refers to a pathological, involuntary rigidity. Person's not doing it on purpose. They're doing it for internal psychiatric reasons that they may or may not be aware of, generally not. It's a rigidity that involves muscle rigidity in its primary form. There are some other forms. But in general, the person sits or stands very still, sometimes for hours and hours. In the classic form, if you move his or her arm, it just stays there. And that's known in the field as waxy flexibility. Catatonic behavior within various disorders can refer to just not moving very much, being way slowed down. And the various definitions in the psychiatric literature refer to as if in a stupor.
Did you find anything in the record or even in your discussions with the defendant that during this time that he felt what he described as catatonia, that he had changed in any significant way the normal activities of his daily life?
There was certainly evidence that he was carrying out normal activities, and things didn't appear to change much except that he stopped going to school, and the schoolwork may have deteriorated. He wrote and talked with me on the video there of believing he had a catatonia. My inference, and I think it's a good inference, is that he was concerned about that, but was misunderstanding the term. He was concerned about lots of symptoms, as we'll continue to hear, concerned about lots of symptoms that he either had or believed he had, but many of them appear to have been misunderstood by him for whatever reason.
Did you see any evidence that he stopped going to class every day to include riding his bike?
No, the evidence is clear that he kept going to class every day, did the shopping, saw his friends up until the point that he sent them away, went to the exercise place, the gym, 2 to 3 times a week for the most part.
24 Hour Fitness, was that the name of it?
Yes, that's the one.
Now, you brought up the relationship thing, and you talk about it here too, and I want to ask you the significance of it. What is the significance of exploring with him the relationship he had with Gargi?
As I may have mentioned last week, being able to form and experience close relationships is an important part of mental health. We've seen that some aspects of Mr. Holmes' life in July 2012 and the months before indicated some difficulty with interpersonal relationships, and both the superficial part and the deep part. The fact that he did carry on a pretty close relationship with a woman, or with a young woman, between about October and March, I think the end of March, it moves one toward thinking more about a healthy thing than an unhealthy thing. Doesn't define anything in itself. We see in chats, for example, interactions among friends and between friends. Some of them are a little odd, many of them are not, that indicate social relationships that he had at the time.
How about the discussion with him about what he saw at that time as his future regarding a family, home, those sort of things? Why is that important?
Simply that he, so far as I know, did not believe the world was going to end. He created the notebook with the idea that someone would read it. I imagine we'll talk about that more at another time. He took pictures that people in the future were going to see. I want to refer to a comment once again by Dr. Gurr, whom you haven't heard from yet, I understand that he may have thought the world was going to end. I found no such reference in the record, no such reference from him at all. I don't see any evidence that he thought everything was going to stop unless the police might have killed him on the spot.
Since you got there, I want to ask you, throughout the course of your time with the defendant, does he ever make mention to you of the fact that he thought that he was doing all of these people a favor by killing them to save them from the end of the world or some catastrophic event?
No, he referred to their lives not being important, or they were going to die anyway. I think maybe in the notebook he said that. But I recall nothing in the record, nor from him, nor from anyone else except Dr. Gurr, that he was doing folks a favor by killing him. As a matter of fact, we'll see, I believe, later in the videos that he says the people would not have wanted to die.
During the discussion about his girlfriend at the time, does he ever make mention to you of, when he talks about St. Patty's Day and going out and having fun, does he ever talk to you either in this video or in the future about any sort of a tension or confrontation that occurs during that period?
I'm aware I'm thinking of a discussion about in a bar when he's concerned that someone has insulted Gargi, but I'm not sure where that came from, and I think I better not comment on it until I'm certain where it came from.
You don't recall it showing up in the conversations you had with him. You're talking about some other place in the record, perhaps?
Yes, yes.
Thank you. But he never mentions it to you?
Not to me that I remember. If we see it in the video, then I'll stand corrected.
What is the significance, if anything, of the defendant then initiating a relationship with another woman in his neuroscience program?
It would only be speculating if I said specifically what significance was. It's something people do, and guys sometimes call up girls and ask them out or flirt with them and things like that, and that appears to be the content of those text conversations that I saw.
At the end, they begin at the end of April?
I believe so. You're talking about Hillary Allen.
Yes. What's then the significance, if anything, about your exploration with the defendant about him wanting to distance himself from her towards the end of their, whatever they're doing?
Only that he appears to have been anticipating being a killer. He says, didn't want her to be associated with a murderer, and one might interpret that as being nice to her. One might interpret that as realizing and anticipating what he was planning to do at the time. Once again, I can't be more specific because I wasn't inside his head.
That use of the word murderer, was that you that gave him that word, or did he pick that word?
I believe he picked that word.
What about, you begin to ask him, let's talk about this. There's some discussion about him now beginning to acquire these implements of death here, these weapons that he's purchased. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Now, is there some psychiatric significance to purchases, or could there be with purchases?
I think you're perhaps referring to the idea of were they reasonable purchases or not. The record clearly indicates that the things he bought had purpose. He mentions at some point that he might have had overkill getting as much as he did, but he didn't go out and just buy things willy-nilly. He says and appears to have researched what was effective and what wasn't. A particular kind of pistol, for example, that was heavy enough to have stopping power and yet light enough to not have a great deal of recoil. They were all related to a rational purpose, an unfortunate one, but a rational purpose. The thing that he did buy a lot of was ammunition, but he also went out and shot the ammunition and shot it up. This is different from the unusual buying of things that people sometimes see in a condition called mania. In manic purchasing, it can be a symptom of mania. You buy things that you don't need. You buy it with money you don't have. You buy it with poor judgment. And it simply doesn't look like this. His purchases simply don't look like this to a psychiatrist, or to me anyway.
Sorry, sir. Did you find any evidence of any sort of frenetic, as you described it, willy-nilly purchases at all during this period of time?
No, I didn't mean to imply that he was frenetically purchasing things, and I don't think I did, I guess. But no, he ordered things, he went to the store and bought things, he waited while the purchases were completed, appears from the record to have studied what he needed, even looked at prices, as I recall. When he got them, he enjoyed having them, sometimes took them apart and put them back together, especially as one would do after firing a lot of rounds from a weapon.
Did you even notice any bizarre purchases or changes in purchases when it came to things like the food he was buying up until the very end?
I don't recall anything unusual. If there is, there is, but I don't recall anything unusual.
You asked him about the movie theater and why he ended up picking that. What's significant about why he chose that movie and that theater?
He said, and the notebook appears to ratify or to be consistent with, it was a place where the people he wanted to kill would be contained. There would be lots of them there. He considered, or apparently considered, different killing environments and chose it because the people would be there. The people would not be able to get away, or in his word, be escapees as easily as they might in another environment. He picked a theater, according to his notebook, instead of, for example, an airport, because he didn't want this to be misinterpreted by others as a terrorist sort of thing. He said, this isn't terrorism. He picked a show that would likely be packed, and he was pretty much aware that it was going to be packed. He picked a late showing for some practical reasons, and he also says he picked it because there would be fewer children there. Those are the things that I recall.
Why is that significant, that last part you brought up?
He says he didn't want to kill children, and says that he was sorry that a child was killed when he discovered that one was.
What impact does that have on your opinion as you begin to sort of put this stuff together and determining whether or not the defendant had the capacity to know right from wrong under the definition that the court's given?
Okay. For one thing, he's told me that the age of the person, child, adult, elderly, doesn't matter with regard to his point system that we'll learn about later. So that one of the things one can infer, and I infer from it, is that he was aware that he didn't, that children were somehow, and I want to say morally different, or they weren't, they were a class of victims he wanted to not use for his points, if you will. We talked a bit about the fact that he wasn't sure that there wouldn't be children there, and about impact on children and things like that, but I don't think that's the question you're asking.
Last subject I want to ask you about with this segment right here was about the selfies that he took. You went through a series of pictures with him and had discussions with him to include pictures of the weapons on a particular sheet, a picture where he's talking about becoming more desirable. Talk to us about why it was significant and how it impacts your thoughts about this.
A main thing that I am interested in when I look at things like this is what does he think the pictures are conveying, and what does he want to convey to people who will look at the pictures in the future. It's pretty clear that he knew or assumed that other people would be able to look at the various pictures, and they had to do with, as we've seen on the video, his wanting people to see him as, I'll probably get the words wrong, but strong in some respects, dangerous, a person to be reckoned with, a person who can defend himself, and a person to be remembered. And I may have asked him for how long, and I'm not certain of that, but remembered not just next week, but remembered for a long time.
Why does that matter?
Once again, it goes to a conscious wish to convey something about himself or about the way he wants to be remembered. A second thing that one may not think much about is that there's an implication there that he's pretty sure or hopes that there will be people there to remember him. That is, the world's not going to end.
Final thing, Doctor, is this. Was there anything in that segment that affected or changed your opinion about the defendant's capacity to know right from wrong in the murders that he committed and planned for and the booby trapping of his apartment based on the definition given by the court?
No.
Was there anything in that segment that changed your opinion about the defendant's ability to form the intent to murder after deliberation, his intent or his ability to know what he was doing when he set up the booby traps in his apartment and conducted himself throughout the 19th and 20th of July?
Nothing in the videos changed that, and as you might imagine, the videos were part of what I used when I wrote my opinions to the court.
Have one moment, Your Honor.
Yes.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes, you may.
Doctor, I'm handing you, in a moment, two separate discs here. Both are labeled People's Exhibit 1006. One of them has the seal from our office on it. And do you recall watching that one in its entirety?
Yes.
And is that a fair and accurate representation within the court's orders of this next segment, which I believe is the afternoon session from July 31st, 2014?
Yes, it is.
Now, are you aware of the fact that we tried to clean up some of that HVAC sound by creating another disc that had the guy that did the videography try to tweak the sound to make it less shushy?
Yes, you guys told me he spent the weekend trying to clean up the disc, the sound on the disc, not to change them.
Did you have the opportunity to review that other disc And I don't mean watch it start to stop, but I mean to review it enough to be convinced that it is also the same segment, just with hopefully better sound?
Yes, watch the beginning, watch the end, verified that the start times and the end times are exactly the same. Once again, did not go through the entire one, but certainly satisfied myself that except for cleaning up the sound, it's identical.
Your Honor, I'm going to move for the admission at this time of People's Exhibit 1006 with the hopefully cleaned up sound into evidence at this time.
Is there any objection?
No additional objections, no.
All right, thank you. Based on my prior ruling, is P-TR-1006 is admitted. And how long is this disc?
May I have one moment, Your Honor? Your Honor, it looks like it is, wait a minute, 2:47, Your Honor.
2 hours and 47 minutes?
Yes, sir.
All right. Why don't we start and play about 20 minutes, and then we'll take a break at about 10 after 10, okay?
Yes, sir. May Dr. Reed step down?
Yes, you may. Thank you. And I am going to dim the lights once again, and then we'll take our morning break in about 20 minutes.
Okay. You looked a little like you were leading a parade up there. Okay, did you have lunch? Yep. Good. Okay. Let's see, where we were when we left off this morning? Your memory's probably better than mine.
You want to talk about the apartment?
Yes, and we talked a little bit about it, and we were getting to the part about the armament. And the way the apartment looked when you left, that's what it was.
Okay.
Okay. Got a picture of that. I'm sure that you remember pretty well. Oh. I don't think this is a picture that you took.
No, I don't think I took one from that direction.
Okay. And I'll just show the camera a little bit. Okay. Does that look familiar?
Looks like my apartment.
Tell me about that. What's in the picture? You're welcome to handle it if you want.
Okay, well, this is all the incendiary devices I made. So I ordered a bunch of fireworks, like cannon shells, in like 3-inch and 6-inch diameter.
So the spherical things are firework cannon, or firework things that get loaded into cannon and shot up for fireworks. Is that?
I assume that's how they work.
Okay. Tell me more about the picture. What's it?
Well, there's all the different fuses running into those, and they go back to like a transmitter that's like radio frequency transmitter that you can press a button and then it'll light the fuse and go through.
The transmitter is RF or wired, you said?
It's battery, it's on a battery, like a 12.8 volt battery.
But the operation is wireless?
Yeah, there's a little tiny remote that you press A, B, C, D, and then like 1, 2, 3, 4.
Tell me where you learned all that stuff. That sounds pretty complicated.
No, you just put the wires in their correct spots, and then and then attach them to the fuses, and then light the fuses when you press the button on the remote.
And the ignition is like a piezoelectric ignition, or
it's like a little circuit that like short circuits and catches fire, and then it's gunpowder fuses go out from there.
Did you ever test that stuff?
No, I didn't get to test any of the incendiary devices, or so I was figuring they wouldn't work.
Really?
Yeah, and it was just made to look bomb-like. Like, that's really scary. But we have to divert attention to over here.
So was the idea that it wouldn't work and it would just look that way, or was the idea maybe it will work? Or
there was like a small possibility that it would work. And so like enough that they would be interested in stopping it.
And what was your thought about a purpose, a reason that you would want them to be interested, or something you would want them to do?
To get them away from the theater, so kind of divert their forces over to the apartment.
Did you think, and it sounds like one possibility is that they would be diverted to the apartment before the shootings began.
Yeah, that's the plan.
That was the plan. And how were you planning to accomplish that?
Through a noise complaint from the neighbors to bring them there.
I heard about the noise complaint idea. I didn't realize that you meant prior to the shooting. And how was that set up?
That was just set up to my computer, where loud music would play after like 15 minutes of silence. So it was like, there was just silence on the timer.
So you left, the computer was on, and 15 minutes later the loud music was supposed to start, is that right?
Yes.
How did you set that up with the 15 minutes of silence? What sort of track was that thing?
Well, there was like an application I had that you could connect different songs together and copy paste minutes of silence in.
Okay, so the computer just thought it was 15 minutes of music, but it was really 15 minutes of silence.
Right, so it was fully on like the highest volume.
And how did that work out in terms of attracting somebody to the sound?
I think they made the complaint, but there wasn't a big response by the police, if there even was a response by the police.
Where was the music coming out? Where were the speakers? In the apartment itself?
Yes, just right next to the monitors and then the bass on the floor.
So a person would complain in the plan to the police, and the police would go to the apartment, bang on the door, open the door.
Yeah, I left the door unlocked.
Okay. As you were thinking about that, did you consider the possibility that a person might have come to the door, that is, a non-police person might have come to the door?
Yeah, and so that's why when I sent a tripwire, I didn't have it attached to the door. I had it kind of inside, so they'd be able to see inside, but not go to like disable anything, because there's an obstacle in the way.
Okay. So if the person who opens the door could see what was there,
then they definitely call the
they would
police.
call the cops. It occurs to me that the cops also would not, once they saw it, they wouldn't rush in either.
Right, but they'd be kind of stuck at the scene, I would
Okay,
think.
the diversion would have worked.
Right.
I don't want to put words in.
I gave it like a small likelihood that any of it would work, but
There was something in a dumpster also. I'm trying to think what it was. Does that ring a bell?
no, I didn't put anything in the dumpster.
Or a...
There was something beside the dumpster. I put
Okay, what was that?
the boom box also with the timer on it, on a CD. And I put the remote for triggering the transmitter thing, so a random person outside could be able to trigger the fuses. And that was just like a random factoring into the equation.
So that would have been another possible way to set off some or all of the incendiary devices. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Do you know what happened in the end to those things?
They got taken away the next day. I told them all about like all the most of the details surrounding it, like how safe it was and what types of explosives or whatever.
And I want to ask you about that interview and that conversation as well. But let's stick it for the moment with the apartment. Did you have any experience with incendiary devices or launch capabilities or fireworks or things like that?
Just your like most very basic fireworks, like the fuse and step back. But
did you ever, and this is coming to me from a different source and I'm not sure about it, was there ever a time when you helped with a fireworks display?
no,
Okay. Doesn't ring a bell that family or somebody was lighting fireworks and you were there or helping, other than black cats and cherry bombs? Things like rockets and stuff like that.
no rockets.
Okay, thank you. Clearing that up a little bit. Okay. Add that back if I may. Some of the things that we see in the picture, the big jars, a couple of liter jars, full of a liquid and some rifle shells and other things. Can you tell me what was in the jar?
The liquid is gasoline, and it kind of dripped down from the styrofoam. Styrofoam and gasoline make napalm.
Okay.
So I thought the napalm might trigger the bullets to go off if it caught fire, but I never tested any of it.
You mentioned that you think there was a low probability of it going off. Is it reasonable to say that you thought there was some probability that it would go off? There was some level.
Yeah.
Probably. Okay. What would have happened had they gone off?
It probably would. The most damage probably would have been caused by fire, and if it spread to the other apartment rooms.
Think anybody would have been hurt, or was that part of the picture in your mind, or no?
No, I didn't think anybody would get hurt from the incendiaries.
The situation at the theater, as I'm understanding, you had to do with a plan and thoughts of killing people. The situation at your apartment, please correct me if I'm wrong,
Was the other purpose of diversion.
it's a different purpose and not specifically having to do with hurting or killing people.
Right.
But you realized there was a chance that might happen.
Yes, I wouldn't want to be in that room when anything went off.
Would you want to be in the next door apartment when anything went on?
I don't think it would have carried that far.
What about the bullets if they'd gone off? The shells?
Well, since they're not in a tube or a barrel, they're going to explode in all directions.
And how did, I think that's a true statement, what I understand about shells that you toss into a campfire or something. How did you know that?
Just thinking it through.
Okay. Just a minute. Look again at all these pictures and see if there's anything else before I dismiss the pictures. Okay. mentioned that you didn't test things. Did you ever test the flammability of some of the things? Not necessarily the device, but just to be sure the gunpowder burned or the napalm worked or something like that.
Yeah, I like cut a piece of the fuse off and kind of lit it over the bathtub because that was like the safest place.
As you're doing those things, what thoughts went through your mind? Do you remember what fantasies or thoughts might have gone through your mind? When you're building this stuff, when you're setting it up, when you're testing the fuse?
Just getting it done.
Just getting it done.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking when I was doing it.
And it is, when you say getting it,
Assembling the components or whatever.
any thoughts about the result of getting it done, the consequences of getting it done?
Just that it was unlikely that it would work.
You mentioned diversion.
Right.
About how far is your apartment from assembly?
10, 15 minutes.
As far as you know, it was in the same jurisdiction as the police. Of course, I guess.
One was Adams County, the other was Arapahoe County.
Okay. You talked about the idea of a mission earlier. And if I'm remembering right, the mission came from within you, not from some other place outside you. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
Tell me more about the mission and what the mission might accomplish, what it might do.
Well, the mission was to go to the theater and shoot as many people as possible.
And that was the thought at the time, back in May, June, July
Yeah.
of 2012. That's one level of mission. Was that designed to further some larger mission or additional mission?
No, that was kind of the ultimate mission.
So that was the whole end.
Yeah.
Any thoughts about why something inside you said this is your mission? What was it that made it important to do that thing? Made it so important that you did it?
Because the alternative was suicide.
And I think you said this morning the alternative was suicide, but you weren't thinking of that at the time.
Right.
You weren't thinking of suicide.
Because I was focused on the homicide.
That's a concise answer of the thousands of possibilities of the reasons for things, for anything. You quickly went to the alternative was suicide. You sound very sure about that, and I'm wondering why you sound so sure about that when one might say the alternative was X or Y or Z. You've been now several times very clear and concise. The alternative was suicide. What leads you to that? What's the reasoning that leads you to that?
Just that doing the homicide got me out of the depression. It gave a purpose.
You were pretty depressed back in January of 12. As I understand it, you were less depressed later in 2012. At least as far as you knew. Am I wrong?
No, it was the opposite. I was more depressed
You were more depressed.
during June and July compared to January.
And some of the things you described about that were, you used the word catatonic.
Yeah, just like unable to get up and go.
What were other symptoms, as you look back on it, that you were depressed at that time? I guess I'm sort of asking, and I don't mean to be sarcastic about it, why should I believe that you were that depressed? Because you haven't told me that much about the depression. Can you tell me more about, describe more to me that tells me that you were depressed back then?
I was just a low mood, not wanting to do anything.
You were doing things pretty actively.
Yeah, which is what got me out of the depression.
If those activities were getting you out of the depression, can you tell me the rationale for actually carrying out the shootings? If the preparation activities were doing their job.
Right.
Talk to me about the necessity of carrying out the shootings themselves after the preparation had done its job.
Well, the shootings were supposed to increase my self-worth. So that would get me out of the depression in the end.
Sure. All right, I'm going to turn the lights back on. All right, the record should reflect that the people stopped playing P-TR-1006. Members of the jury, we're going to go ahead and take our morning break at this time. Please remember that all my advisements apply during the break. Enjoy the break. I'll see you back here in 20 minutes. Thank you. The record should reflect that the jury has left the courtroom. Please be seated, everyone. Is there anything we need to talk about at this time?
Just to anticipate sort of where the court would go the rest of this morning, is this going to be our one break before lunch?
I think so.
There's 2 hours and 20 minutes left on this segment. The next segment is short, 2 hours and 14 minutes long. My expectation is, given our current lunch and that one within the normal day, and then we
Okay. All right, thank you. Anything on behalf of the defense, Mr. King?
No, thanks.
All right, thank you. I'll see you after the break. The court will be in recess. Thank you.
Please rise.